Hello and welcome to Quill's Corner. This is part 2 of my Dreamcatcher tutorial, and with this video we are going to do the inner webbing. So I'm going to show you two different types of Dreamcatcher frames, the circular one and the half moon shape. So we're going to start with the circle one to give you the simple technique, and I'm going to do this close up here. So I just tied the end of my string right here. You can use any string. You can even use yarn. What I failed to mention in my first part of this video, that was for the framing. If you're going to wrap your circle, you can pretty much use anything. You can use ribbon, strips of fabric, you can use the jute twine like I did. You can even use like strips of leather. So you can get really creative with this. And then with this inner webbing, I'm using like an embroidery floss because it's a little bit thicker, but you can use regular sewing thread. And if it's easier, you can do this with a needle instead of just using your hands if it's a little bit easier to get in between the little sections that we're going to create. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take just a little section in my hand and I'm going to wrap it over my, right here, can you see this? Wrap it over my frame, all right, and then I am going to pull it through like a loop that I just made. I'm going to pull it all the way through. And I cut a really long string, so it's kind of taking a little bit longer, but if you want to like roll up your string and just kind of unravel it as you go, you can too. But that makes a little loop, and then I'm just going to pull it tight like that. And then I have this little section here. Okay, so this is the section that we're working with. So now I'm just going to do that all the way around in little sections. I'm going to hold it tight, put it over my frame, okay, and then I'm going to pull it through. And then I'm going to make a little loop, okay? Pull it tight. So I'm going to do the same thing all the way around. And I'm making the sections fairly even, but I'm not measuring, so you can just kind of eyeball it here. And it really doesn't matter how many of these you do, depending on the size of your circular frame. You may want more or less, and you're just going to kind of do it for the aesthetic that you're looking for. If you want your sections to be bigger or smaller, it's entirely up to you. And there is an option here, if you would like to, you can loop it around the thread another time after you've looped it around the frame, and you can make a knot, and that'll secure it so that it doesn't move. Personally, I don't do that because I like the flexibility of being able to move my loop around on my frame, like just pulling it back and forth so that I can adjust the width of my sections when I've got it all the way around the frame. But if that's not something that you want to do, if you know exactly where you want each section of thread to be, you can totally knot it, and that is your deal, whatever you feel like. So once we get back to where we started, we're gonna do our last loop right on top of our first loop. So we're just going to take it, oops, Alright, so I'm just gonna line up the two things so that it's a complete circle, okay? And then, since we did this whole thing, and we've got it all down, we're gonna start working our web from the outer to the inner circle. And this is a really good time to start adding beads, if you'd like to add beads. If you have a thinner thread, seed beads look really beautiful on here. Or if you have a thicker thread, you could use glass beads or maybe like those plastic pony beads that you put in your hair. Those all look really lovely. So we are going to start by wrapping around that same loop technique that we did for the frame, but over the thread instead of the thread. Ugh, that's not words. Over the thread instead of the circular frame. So we're going to do that same thing. We're just looping it over and we're pulling it under. And I'm pulling, 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 pulling. Alright, so here, once you have it looped, see, I've got my loop that I made. You're going to find the center of that thread, that section. You're going to find that center, hold it, and then you're going to pull. Now if you notice here, it kind of overlaps a little bit, but this isn't really going to matter a whole lot because you're just going to keep going in a circle and you're not going to stop. You're just going to keep on going and you're going to go in the center of all of these sections. So I'm going here. Got it in the center, and ooh, this looks a little crazy. I'm doing the same thing I did with the frame, but it's a little bit harder to see, I think, when I'm doing it on thread. But if you want to just replay the first part of this video and see how I did it around there, it's exactly the same. It just looks a little bit weird when I'm doing it with the thinner thread because you can't really see over my hands as much. But so you're going to be making these little triangles. So what I want you to do is you're going to do it all the way around. You're going to keep going in the center of all of these sections, and you're going to keep going until you get it small enough that you're happy, and then you're going to tie it off, and I'm going to show you exactly what that looks like. So I'm going to put this to the side. Now this is what you're going to end up with, okay? It's going to look kind of like a star or a flower. But you are going to stop. So you could even go smaller than I did. But you're going to stop and you're going to do a knot. Just whatever knot you can get to secure it. And then if you want to end it sooner, like maybe let's say I stopped here around this circle. You have an open space here so you can put something pretty like a pendant, a rock, or a gem or something like that. Entirely up to you. So that's all we're doing for this centerpiece for the circle. But now I'm going to show you how to do a crescent shape. So for the crescent shape, it's a little bit different because instead of a circle where we're spiraling, 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 see how I just did this first part? It's exactly the same as how we did the circle. But since I have ends, when I get to this end, I'm going to knot it to secure it. And then I'm going to go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, instead of continuing in a circle. So I'm knotting this so it doesn't go anywhere. And it's easier for me to work this way. So I like to flip it upside down and then turn it so that I can get it where I want it. And now you're going to do that same technique. You're going to put it, oops, sorry. You're going to put it through. And you're going to pull it under. Okay, so it's a loop. Now, you're going to still find the center. What I want to show you here is that when you pull this tight, your thread disappears. Okay, that's good. That's what we want because we want it to taper and get bigger and then taper again so that it looks like a crescent shape. So this is going to happen every time we get to an end. And that is totally fine. So you're going to get it over, pull it through, sometimes helps to hold this knot while you're working on the next knot. That I really like to do so that it doesn't move around. And that's only if you're doing my technique where I'm not making knots. If you're making a knot, then it's not going to go anywhere. You don't have to worry about it. But I'm pulling that over and under, finding the middle, pulling it tight, making these triangles just like we did with the circular Dreamcatcher, that kind of classic Dreamcatcher look. And if you run out of thread at any point, you can always just tie a little knot and add some more. Which it looks like I'm starting to get to that point. Find my center here. Alright, so here I'm back at the top. Since this is my last, since this is my last section, this is where I'm going to tie my knot. So, find that center, pull it, okay, and then I'm going to hold it, whip it around one more time, find that knot and just make that nice and tight. Alright, so this is the next part. We're going to go back this way. So I'm turning it, okay, putting it upside down, and this next one, okay, we are going to have another disappearing thread. Pull that tight. There we go. Actually, I may have, hold on. It's kind of weird because I'm looking at it through the camera. Oh, okay. Here we go. So I just did it through itself. Ignore me, I'm being weird. I'm sure if you're doing this at home and you're seeing what's in front of you, it probably looks way easier to tell, but you're gonna want to make sure it makes a triangle. So if it did something weird, like what I just did, where it was kind of like some geometric shape that I forgot the name of because I haven't been in high school in like 8 years, but you're gonna make sure they're all triangles. So we're gonna triangle here, go to the next one, triangle here, next one. So it gets quicker as you go because each one is going to be a little bit smaller. Okay, and I'm going to go here. And I am about at the end of my thread. But I'm actually finished with how far in I want my Dreamcatchers. So I can end it right here. But if you don't want to and you want to go back down, you can keep doing that as long as you want until you get this as wide as you need it to be. I'm just tying this off. And that's all there is to it. You can cut this off if you'd like. Okay. But you've got your crescent moon shape right here. And you've got your circle. So that concludes the webbing part of this tutorial. My next video is going to be about how to decorate and hang these. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.